My name is Stacy Webster, and I'm the Director of Co-op Development, and I've worked at Iowa Institute for 4 years. Prior to that, I worked as the controller for Gavilon and worked in both domestic and international accounting with Bunge. I started my career in public accounting in St. Louis, and I grew up on a farm in north central Illinois, raising cattle, hogs, corn, and soybeans. I attended the University of Illinois and moved to Iowa about 15 years ago. Iowa Institute is the trade association for cooperatives here in the state of Iowa. So if you're familiar with organizations like Iowa Corn or Iowa Pork, we are very similar to them, but instead of the farmers being individual members of us, your cooperative is a member of us. We were founded in the 1950s by a group of farmers in Sheldon, Iowa, who felt that cooperatives needed a voice as capital. Today, we perform many of those same activities. We lobby at both the state and federal level. We provide business development resources such as benchmarking, merger studies, and help with strategic planning sessions. And we provide over 20 educational and training programs for both board of directors and staff at your cooperative. The previous sessions are now posted online, both the recordings and PowerPoints, and those are available in this program and also on our YouTube page. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I'd like to introduce our panelists now. We have Rick Bryan, Chairman of the Board at Land O'Lakes, Steve Henry, Chairman of the Board for Farm Credit Services of America, and Dan Schurr, Board Chairman, CHS. Rick, if you could start us off, I'd like to maybe have you guys each tell us a little bit about yourself, some history. So Rick, we'll let you start off. Again, if you guys have any questions, please raise your hand and I will pass them along to the guys. I am sure they would much rather hear from you than from me.
All right, good morning, everybody. Like she said, my name is Rick Bryan. I grew up on a small grain and livestock farm in Summers, Iowa. That would be halfway between Okoboji and Des Moines. Today, there's no livestock, but until just recently, for the last 30 plus years, I've owned an accounting and income tax business in Fort Dodge, Iowa, that specialized in farmers' income tax returns. I graduated from Iowa State University in 1984 with a degree in agricultural business. Later, marrying my wife, Maureen, and we had 3 kids. One of them went down the bad road and went to the University of Northern Iowa. The other 2 one graduated from Iowa State University with a degree in agronomy, and I have a son, Nolan, who is going to be a senior this year. My current farming operation is 100% corn and soybeans, and this led me down the path toward my local co-op. I served on what I will describe as a 1-year term or 1-year experience on the FC board. And that lasted from 1996 to 2007, where I served as the president also for 4 years. This time on the board taught me the value of the federated system, the co-op system, helping your members. This, in the future, as we had term limits on our local board, led me to the Land O'Lakes board where I serve today. So I could go on, but that is kind of a little bit about Rick.
Steve, do you want to share some about yourself?
Sure.
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning. I graduated from Iowa State in 1983, right in the middle of the farm crisis, and I was a real estate loan officer during that time. So I spent most of my early career recommending foreclosures or managing acquired properties. I was out in Nebraska at that time, and then came back to the family farm in '88, and my dad and I and one other guy started farming. Well, my dad was farming, I started farming with them, and we've expanded our farm, and today we have 5 full-time employees. My wife is fully engaged, and I have 2 sons that have returned back to the farm also. We're corn soybeans, seed corn, hogs, cattle, a little bit of everything. I was started out in the cooperative system with being on the local board of our co-op, Heart of Iowa, then Key Co-op, and then am also now chairman of the board for Farm Credit Services of America. We're a $31 billion company. We have about 1,600 employees, and I think it's 60,000 customers that we deal with. So cooperative system, at first when I started farming, I was all about making money and thought it was all about efficiency and everything. But as I've gotten older, I realized how the cooperative business model is the one business model that I think is most important for our communities that we serve are located. So
Dan?
yeah, that's a little about me.
We'll let you
Good
share.
morning. I'm Dan Schurr. I live in eastern Iowa. So if you go on Interstate 80 to all the way out of Iowa into Illinois, I'm the last farm before you leave the state of Iowa. I farm here with my wife, Karen, and we have a corn and soybeans farm. We also have a trucking business that my daughter is involved with. We started the cooperative in the cooperative system, Rick, back a long time ago with the Land O'Lakes Young Farmer Program when we were just getting started, and started on the River Valley Cooperative Board quite a few years ago. Joined the CHS board in 2006, and I've been chairman now for 3 years on the CHS board. CHS is a cooperative, and I always describe it. It's like Land O'Lakes that nobody knows about. So it's a kind of quiet cooperative, but it's fairly sizable operation that's based in St. Paul. We have about 12,000 employees, about a $35 billion revenue company, and we operate in most parts of the world. We do grain, we do energy, pretty well anything that's involved with the farm operation and taking that on and off the farm. We have refineries and we have ethanol. That's the pretty broad, pretty diverse company, I would say, pretty diverse company. And I would agree that the cooperative system, the cooperative model is a unique model. It's something that is a competitive advantage for all these guys that are talking here today. And the cooperative system, there's not anything like it. Where you are serving your owners who are also your customers. So it's a unique system and brings a lot of value. So thank you.
So again, if you guys have any questions, raise your hand or put them in the chat. Otherwise, I've got a few questions prepared and we'll continue on. My next question is, what made you interested in being on the board instead of simply being a member of your cooperative? Steve, do you want to kick us off with that one?
Sure. Our board, the Heart of Iowa had what they called an associate membership to their board as associate director, where they invite a young producer in just to get to know the co-op. Like I said, I was doing business elsewhere. They invited me into the boardroom to be an associate director. And that's what opened the door for me to understand the co-op. So once I got on that, I guess I always had a passion to serve. And so once I believed in the co-op, I felt like it was my duty to kind of give back.
Dan or Rick?
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, mine would be just very similar. My dad was on a cooperative board. I had served on a variety of other boards, Farm Bureau and cattlemen's and those that you get involved with when you're on a farm. And led me to that, learning a little more about the cooperative system. And after I did, and I think, once you get immersed, especially as a board member and get immersed in the cooperative system, you really see what the cooperative does for the community, what it does for the farmers. And it's something that you soon get pretty passionate about and get pretty engaged in, that you want to make sure that they're successful and they're there for the long term, so my children and my grandchildren can enjoy that also.
I like to say that I was coerced into running for the board. I spoke up one time when I had an opinion, and two directors addressed the fact that I should run for the board, and it was just going to be for 1 year, so no big deal. That turned into, like I said before, 12 years, serving as the chairman at the end. And you get to find out that, well, I'll back up. My local co-op was the place that we could do business. We didn't have ethanol plants at that time. That was the place, other than a feed mill, that you took your grain. So it was the trusted partner. And I got to witness firsthand how, as a co-op, we were able to do things for our members that they could not financially or physically do for themselves. So they became the trusted partner, which then led me to Land O'Lakes, because my local manager, had it in his head that I should run for the region board. And Dan knows all about this history. Dan and I actually ran against each other at one time, and the better guy won, Dan. But Land O'Lakes has the philosophy that it's farmer to fork. So it's how, as a business, we are able to serve the rest of the world. Everybody's heard about Land O'Lakes butter, but the butter is really a smaller part of our business. We are really involved with agronomy, anything agronomy wise, and then also the livestock feed. So like I said, I was coerced to run for 1 year, and that's turned into a long-term relationship.
So kind of segueing there, the next question we have is, how long have you served on the board? Or how long have you been a board officer? And then also, what other roles had you previously held on the board or previous boards? And how long did you serve in those roles? So a little bit about your time in leadership and how long you've been in there, or other roles that you had on the board that got you there. Dan, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. So at CHS, we have an executive committee, which is elected by the board of directors, and it's several different offices. I have served most of those offices over the period of my service, which I started in 2006. I've served as chairs of committees, so it's just I'm assuming the rest of the co-ops that are represented here have a similar setup, and typically those you would serve in roles like that. And then in 2000, or 3 years ago, I took over the role of chairman.
Rick?
Okay, like I said before, I served on my local board, and for the final 4 years, I served as the chairman of that board. From there, I went to Land O'Lakes, and like Dan was commenting, we have committees also, and I chaired the audit committee. Today we call it audit and risk. And I believe I was the chairman of that for 3 years, then stepped into the role of, and we are elected by our fellow directors. Then I stepped into the role of first vice chairman, and for the last 2 years, I have been the chairman of the board.
And my story would be very similar to these guys, committee chairs for a while and then step into vice chair. We just have a 2-year agreement that we'll be chair of the board for years with our Farm Credit Services of America. We rotate to always try to develop and keep new leadership coming up.
Great. We got a question in from the students. They want to have a question is, what is the makeup of the board you were on? How big are they? Or what different areas or sectors are represented? Rick, you want to take that one to start with?
All right, we are, we have 25 today. We have 25 directors. We try to have it divided between ag and dairy. I shouldn't say we try, that is the way it is laid out. So we get feedback from both sides. Today we have 5 directors from the state of California, 3 from Pennsylvania, and our board makeup is where our directors come from. We try to get somebody to represent their region, and it's based on their sales. So Iowa, for example, Iowa and Nebraska are one region, and there would be 2 producers and 1 co-op manager. We are required to have 5 co-op managers on our board. The rest of us are all producers.
Steve?
With Farm Credit Services of America, we represent Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wyoming. So that's the territory, and the number of directors is based upon the volume of business done in those states. So Iowa and Nebraska have the most. There's 15 directors on our board. We have 1 financial expert that's appointed, and then we have a young and beginning farmer position. We've also started an appointment on. We've had that for 10 years. It's member elected, and we have a very diversified representation that comes through the nominating committees. And whenever we've had, say, a director resign or somebody do another role off of the board, we've actually gone through and interviewed, and we have 1 director who's 29. We have another 2 in their 40s, and we've really tried to represent the range from the really big agribusiness finance. I think we have 2 on the board, and then the rest are more representative of Iowa and Nebraska, South Dakota. 1 cowboy from Wyoming.
What about CHS, Dan?
CHS has 17 board members. We're fairly formulaic in our bylaws on how that process works. We have 17 represented in regions, but they all must be producers, and they are assigned to different regions based on the sales that are done in those regions. So we cover the entire United States with directors, but the directors, number of directors in a region are assigned by the volume of sales in that region.
We got another question in from the students. This one is, how can cooperatives broaden their reach? And what they're particularly interested in is improving technology, expanding locations, things like that.
Well, I'll start with this one. I think we're all of us on this call are talking about that right now. We've been talking about that This is a strategy priority for a lot of cooperatives to try to figure out how do we serve our customers? How do we broaden our reach? What's the most effective way to do that? How do we use technology to do that? So I think there's a lot of strategies, but I think for us, the start of it is that we've got to make sure we have the right people. And that means what we call it in conclusion, which means we want a diverse set of employees. We want a diverse set of thoughts and ideas that are coming in. People that will challenge the status quo, people that will say, we don't need to do it that way anymore because we have this technology that can take that place of that. So we're focusing quite a bit on people, hiring the right people, getting a diverse employee group, and making sure that they have the willingness and the ability to speak up when they need to and when they can. And we will continue to look at CHS globally. Global business is not simple. Every country has different cultures and laws, and the ability to do business is much different in every country. And if you can imagine, trying to do business in the US is fairly easy, but you go to places like Bangladesh or Russia, or areas that have corruption and different ways of doing business, it can be quite difficult. But we will continue to look at that because the reality is the businesses we're in are global. And if we don't figure out how to work globally, we're going to struggle to compete on behalf of our owners. We serve American farmers, but their products are used all over the world, and their competitors are all over the world. So we're going to have to figure that out. So we will continue to look globally. We'll continue to figure out how and where we can be effective. And we're not, well, we're a large company. We're not large enough to do everything everywhere. So we have to figure out where is it that we could be most effective for the American farmer. And we'll continue to focus on that.
Rick or Steve, anything to add?
Go ahead, Steve.
The one thing I would say is the way we can be more effective is we got to make sure we're relevant to the customers and the owners that we're serving. Relevancy is really becoming a big deal. I agree wholeheartedly with Dan on the diversity and inclusion. That's got to be part of it, but if we're going to be relevant to the future, we got to have, the technology, we got to have the knowledge, we got to have the skills to serve the customer of the future. And competition is becoming more, for sure, national in finance, and that's become kind of a challenge for cooperatives, because cooperatives tend to have these lending territories and everybody the territory. If BASF wants to do a nationwide lending program, these territories get in the ways of things like that. And so we're going to have to figure out, other than technology, how can we be relevant to what our customers are looking for?
I agree. I agree with both of the other speakers. People is a big thing. Atlanta Lakes is constantly looking for employees of the future. The guys that are listening to us today. But like Dan said, when you start traveling to other countries, they have altogether different cultures, different rules, different laws, and you don't want to expand just because you're expanding. I was very fortunate because I served on my local co-op board, and during my time on the board, we were very aggressive and we grew dramatically, and it wasn't always contiguous. So I got to witness this firsthand, that going to another country, no, we didn't do it, but we went to other counties, we went to other parts of the state. And Atlanta Lakes serves the whole world. Everybody, hopefully everybody eats Atlanta Lakes butter. We have Purina feeds, and there's livestock all around the world. And our other division of our company is Winfield United, and which is agronomy. And the perfect example is we have a facility down in South Africa, and we've been down there and witnessed this. And even though they farm a little bit different, it's production agriculture. So, and that's everywhere in the world. So we don't want to grow just to grow, but you want to be ready to serve your members today, tomorrow.
So another question that we have, what are some things that your co-op has done differently during COVID-19? And I know before we started today that you guys were having just a few conversations about your board meetings, but what are some things that the co-ops that you are associated with have done differently during this time?
Well, I will go.
Go ahead.
I'll go first. Lano Lakes, we normally have corporate board meetings every other month, and these may take 3 to 4 days. We will have different calls throughout in between, but today everything is being done virtually. We question whether or not we're doing enough fiduciary oversight, but our directors all have phones, so we talk a lot. Our corporate headquarters has been closed down since, the whole pandemic hit. So people are working from home. Yes, we still have people working on the front lines. Milk gets picked up every day. But I really think that there will be a change of how not only Land Lakes, but a lot of companies operate tomorrow. There will be more people working from home. Will business and travel be as important as what we seem to think it is today? There will be lots of changes going forward.
Yeah, our business has suffered the same things. I mean, we're meeting by Zoom meetings every time we meet now, and it's interesting. Our investment in technology that we've made as a company is really paying dividends throughout this. We actually have growth in our loan volume through this whole period. It's kind of surprising to all of us, but we've been able to march along and close loans, do everything through technology, and it really hasn't impacted our ability to get the work done. Now, but it has impacted our ability to meet face to face with a lot of customers. We're opening that up now. In fact, in the countryside, it's different than, say, the central headquarters. The headquarters is probably going to be shut down probably for another month, but the retail offices are starting to open up with half-truths. We aren't ones where people traditionally come into our office anyway. We're a business that goes out to where the customer's at, and we're doing whatever the customer is most comfortable with out in the field.
So CHS, when the pandemic started, we started our emergency response team, which quickly got into the discussion of how do we get people remote, and all the discussions we've had about leadership and the board and how they are operating is all remote. But it was really fascinating to watch, I think, the evolution of how the pandemic was received by our employees, and then how we worked through that, because all of us had to deal with the issues of somebody getting sick, having to go home. But at CHS, we have things that refineries that if are not run properly, they explode. So you have to have very skilled people that show up to work and do their job. And what happens if you have a whole set of those that get infected and have to go home? So it's really, we had to have an emergency response program that put in place backups and ways that we could work through that. But now it's interesting, I think, to watch how it is evolving. I know Rick, Land O'Lakes remodeled their office. We just remodeled our home office and spent a lot of time looking at how does the next generation operate. So we removed all the walls. We removed all the cubicles. We made it a very open place, a lot of social areas and places where people can aggregate and talk and communicate. And well, that doesn't work now. So that doesn't work in this environment. Now it may someday, but it doesn't now. But we were trying to create this this office space of the future that would attract people that are on this phone to work for us. And now we have to think through that differently. We have, I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the way people operate, but it's not going to be easy to work through. As you think of, some people are perfectly fine. We were talking about this before the call started. Some people are perfectly fine with working at home. Other people need that collaboration. They need that person-to-person talking about their life and their social life, and that's so important to them. Other people don't have a work environment at home that's conducive. They have children, or they have other distractions, or they don't have an office that they can work out of, and they need a place to go. Yet their coworker that probably sits next to them in the office says, "No, I'd rather work at home." So it's quite a challenge, and I think that we're all going to see a lot different way that we work, and as we work through this, and it's probably going to take years to figure out how this all pans out.
Thank you. We've got a question again from the group. Olivia, do you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
Yes. Hello, my name is Olivia Mitchell, and I was just wondering, what are some value adds that your cooperatives offer?
Value add. Can you expound on that a little bit farther?
Incentives or bonuses for staff, employees, stuff like that.
Okay. You know, I can tell you this, at Land O'Lakes, I mean, yes, we're like every other corporate company. You know, we'll offer the normal benefit packages, you know, whether it's health insurance, whether it's retirement plan, things of that nature. I can tell you this, our new office that we built offered different things that I had never ever thought about. It's like Dan said, it's altogether different today versus yesterday. Everything is more wide open. There are no offices per se, but we have daycare right there in the building. We have a doctor right there in the building. Otherwise, you know, mom or dad has to take their child to the doctor, and so all of a sudden you're away from work. You've got to go pick up your child. You've got to go to the doctor. You got to bring them back. We have on-site medical right there. We have a fitness center built right into it. Little things like that. So we more tried to adapt to the employee of tomorrow. So there you go.
I would add one that I think is really important, and we probably gloss over it once in a while, but we all have it, and it's this cooperative structure. So you have an option when you're trying to seek a job to work for a multitude of companies, and one of them is the co-op, and it could be your local co-op or one of the co-ops that's represented here. We are finding at CHS that is a big value add. That is something that resonates with employees. I've seen it firsthand. We brought in a CFO from Campbell's Soup, and he was a East Coast guy, and he fell in love with the cooperative system. He fell in love with the co-op model that supports American agriculture and supports rural communities, and is serving every day, is focused on what's best for that American farmer. That seems that having that purpose, having to be part of something that's larger than just another company that goes out and makes money, is pretty valuable. And I think that's something that you might think about as you as you think about where you're going to work, and can you fall in love with the purpose of the company? And I think a cooperative model has something that you could fall in love with.
I'd wholeheartedly agree with what Dan said. Having that mission-driven purpose when you're waking up in the morning is a real value. It takes a little while before a young person really understands that. I'm talking about myself. And once you do, you realize the differences in company attitudes that are just totally profit oriented, so it goes in their personal pocket versus trying to serve and help your communities. It's a big deal.
I want to follow up with that is, giving back to your community, your local community, is something that a lot of companies do not do. It's not all about making money. One thing that we have found at Land Lakes is that a lot of our employees like the fact that we have what we call our foundation, and the foundation is about giving back to the communities. As a board, we will actually go into the inner cities of, say, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we will do service projects giving back to the community. We go to the Gillette's Children's Hospital, and one gentleman at Christmas time dresses up like Santa Claus. We're giving back to the community. We donate a lot of food to food banks, so it's been very relevant during this whole pandemic. We'll give away a lot of milk, cheese, butter, and we also have what we call our first run macaroni and cheese that we give back. So it's not just about making money, it's also serving the communities that are our members.
You actually went into the next question, Rick. That was good. Steve or Dan, do you want to talk? I know CHS and SDS both have some programs. Do you want to talk about anything you guys do on some of your foundations or charitable giving as well?
Go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead, Dan. Okay. Well, our company, we've really we've done a lot to give to food banks throughout the states that we're serving in. We don't talk about a lot, but we've given a lot of money to food banks out there. Probably the thing that we try to make the biggest splash with would be working with the land grant schools in our states that we serve. Yeah, we give close to, we're a money company, so we give money, and we go in and we have employees go in and speak and teach classes or speak at classes would be the biggest thing that we do. I think we're, don't hold me to this, but I think we're around $600,000 a year is what we give out to the different land grants that we serve.
Our story is very similar, so I think it'd be duplicative. We focus on giving back in two different ways. One, through our foundation, we work on education. It can be farm safety and for small children, all the way up to educating our board of directors. But most of our money in the foundation is spent on providing support for people on this call to make sure they get education, so they can afford education and to work for our cooperatives and to be a part of our cooperative system. And we also have a giving arm that gives back to the communities that we operate in, whether that's in large communities where we have offices or in the rural communities where we may be the only business of any size in that community. So that community relies on us to be there and support the community and make sure it's safe.
Another question that's come in: what do you think the future of cooperatives looks like? And what are some of the positives or benefits or some weaknesses, and how are your cooperatives working to change or improve on those?
Well, I think that's a great question. We talk about this often. I think we have spent a lot of time discussing that very thing of what can our cooperative do? What are the benefits of the cooperative? Um, and cooperatives in general and the ag community in general are pretty quiet, reserved people, so they don't go out and tout their benefits very often. But we probably don't do a very good job of communicating what the benefits are. Um, when you're in a cooperative, you you extend the reach of your operation beyond the end of, or if it's a farmer, beyond the end of the farm gate. So you have the option as a farmer to buy and sell from whoever you want, but the cooperative offers you to be a partner and go out beyond your farm to be a part of the supply system or the sales system, the food distribution system, whatever cooperative you're part of, the finance system. And now you get to share the risk with that cooperative, but you also share the benefit. So that's a great way, because you're a patron, you get patronage. If the cooperative earns money, you get patronage back, and that's a way to share in that benefit and extend the reach of your farm beyond just what you do at home. You also get to be an owner, and in ownership of a cooperative, you get this say of what the direction and the future of that cooperative is. That's quite compelling. It's probably something I think when people first learn about cooperatives, they don't think much about. But as you get involved, you realize that your voice does matter. And the board of directors that serves on these cooperatives listens to that, because they need to know what the future needs of your farm are and how best they can serve that. So that's a pretty important benefit, I think, being an owner. So you're a patron and an owner. So then, what do the cooperatives do with that? How do they set themselves up for the future? I think as we move forward, we have to leverage that cooperative model more, cooperative system, and show that benefit. We haven't done that well in the past. Show that benefit to our owners. A little more collaboration between cooperatives is probably going to be necessary. We're going to have to work together, because as the world matures, as the world of agriculture matures, it's no longer a county problem. It's no longer a state problem or even a U.S. problem. It's a world issue, where we saw this very well with COVID. COVID wasn't just something that happened in China. It wasn't something that just happened in the U.S. It happened all over the world, and the world responded. And the agricultural community responded across the world. So we saw this in the trade negotiations with China, shut down trade with the U.S. So the world responded and filled that need. We have to make sure that agriculture in the U.S. is prepared to take on those challenges in the future around the world, and that we're prepared to handle that challenge. That's a big challenge, but it's something I think that the cooperative model is perfectly set up to do. So I have a lot of faith that the cooperative model works. And it's interesting because cooperatives in agriculture are sometimes looked at as old or antiquated systems that my dad did or my grandfather was part of. And that's probably true. But also cooperatives are a very new thing for a lot of people. My son is part of cooperatives in New York City, that brewing cooperative, a grocery cooperative, they have real estate cooperatives, all of those with that same purpose of shared ownership and shared benefit. And I think that we have that model. We just have not been really good at talking about it. So.
See, and I'll piggyback on that. I think that change is something that's going to happen, and our job as a board of directors, as a company, is to try and get to that target before it gets there, and it's moving all the time. One of the other jobs that we are tasked to do, and I never thought I would enjoy it, and today I kind of do, is we travel to Washington, D.C., and we have to meet with the different people that make our laws for tomorrow. And, you know, and most of them are pretty open-eared, but we have to think about where, just like they do, where is the target going to be in the future?
I agree wholeheartedly with Dan and Rick on this. The agricultural world is getting smaller in the United States, it's getting bigger worldwide. And for us to have an effective relevance system within the United States, especially with the pressures of different worldviews, if we can be united to help common cause for agriculture, the cooperative is the best system to do that. And I just really echo what Dan was saying, how that you start small and it just kind of relevancy grows bigger throughout.
So another question here from the group: how can we become a member of a cooperative?
Can you say that
Get
again,
along.
Well, I'll start at our local membership, our local co-op first. Is, you know, we fall under the rules of Capra Volstead, meaning that your occupation needs to be production of agriculture. And for you that don't know it, the difference between the co-op model versus regular corporations is as we make money, we give our profits, if we can, we give them back to the membership, you, the owners. And Land O'Lakes has the same model, is to be a member of Land O'Lakes. We have members that are local co-ops, and we also have members that are the actual a dairy. The Land O'Lakes is their local co-op. So yeah, just like he said, get a loan. You've got to be a farmer, some type of a farmer.
And usually at your local ones, Rick, if you're looking at the Farm and Supply, they would fill out an application, and then depending on the co-op, they would have a small fee or a small amount of money they would pay as part of their membership, that one-time stock.
When your parents bought their stock in their local co-op, they maybe had to give $100 down, and then as the co-op made money, that money, the profits would, or their portion of their patronage would go to buy it up to say $1,000 to $1,500. And that's, you know, most co-ops don't say, here, cut me a check for $1,500. They let you buy your way in. They earn your business.
Another question: what is a challenge, or what do you feel are the greatest challenges cooperatives will face in the upcoming decade?
Go ahead, Dan.
I think challenge several. That I don't know if there's a greatest one, but several. One is how do we attract the best people, and how are we going to do that? As I said earlier, we're trying to compete in a world market, and how are we going to get those people? I think that's a challenge that our management teams on our respective cooperatives represented here think about every day. So I think that's a challenge, getting the right leadership, getting the right tone and culture within the company and on the board, I think also going to be important. The other challenge probably is we always are looking at is how is the world going to change? And obviously we're not going to be able to predict that, but we're going to try to do our best at shooting at a few darts and figuring out where we think the world's going, and trying to scenario plan through that process. You can jump, if you think about our companies, so we have refineries, and so we refine crude oil and we make gasoline and diesel. So what does the Tesla of the world, what does that mean? And how does that factor into our future? And the changing technologies, when you think about the Amazon type environment where we can get anything with the touch of a button, how does that change the distribution world? How does technology change the logistics and the way that we interact with each other, but also how we move products around the world? So there's a lot of things that could be changing going forward. We talk about it as disruptive technologies that we would see coming forward, and some of them could be drastically disruptive. You think about film camera versus digital. That was a drastic disruption. Others are more subtle, and they happen over time, and they change over time. So how does that change? Certainly the banking industry is looking at that as going from a bricks and mortar type banking industry to where people don't need to go to the bank. They can do everything online. So why do you need bricks and mortar? So I think all of our companies that are represented in this call are doing that, trying to figure out the future. We all have a basis in agriculture, which probably the base root of agriculture doesn't change substantially. We're still going to have to provide food for the world, and we're still going to do it in a model that's fairly similar to the way we've done it for many years. But the distribution channels and the way we do business, the way we interact, that's all going to have to change. And we need to have a company that can flex with that and change with that. We can't continue to do business the way we have because that's not going to be the way we do business in the future.
Atlanta Lakes says, we deal with members of all sizes. You can have remember, half of our membership is a local co-op. So we will have local co-ops that will have $500,000 worth of sales, all the way up to members that are $1 billion plus. And that's going to continue to evolve through mergers and acquisitions. And we have to offer services to the broad spectrum, and they all are different. And because we are a co-op and we give back to our membership, we offer what we feel is a different value versus a company that 100% operates just for a profit. You give back to their shareholders that are not even a member of their business. So, but it's going to continue to change. Dan made the comment about, I just heard you say digital. Kodak is a great example. Kodak was a company that did not want to change. Everybody's going to have a camera for forever. Is Kodak even there today? No, they didn't want to change. So it's a tough one, but we've got to continue to change as our membership changes.
I would say the consolidation of wealth and guys, Dan and Rick and myself's generation, and trying to get that transferred to the next generation is going to be a huge challenge for agriculture. Getting leadership to that next generation is going to be difficult. With the changing world views all around us, but yet the need for honesty and integrity and work ethic is still going to carry the weight of what gets done in this country. And I don't know, when I look at the consolidation of operations that's going to happen and how's that going to happen, it's going to change the countryside.
Well, we are about at the end of our time, so I will ask if there's any other questions from the group on the phone. And while we see if there's any of those that are coming in, do you guys, just for kind of a wrap up, do you want to give any last advice or share with these students why cooperative might be a great place to start their career if they're uncertain?
I would say the reason you'd want to work with a cooperative is generally every cooperative I've been around, they care about their people. They're and it doesn't just mean their customers, but they want to train you up. They want to support you in your career because they know that the future of agriculture and their company is dependent upon you.
I would say just the purpose of co-op makes it a reason for me to I would want to work for a co-op. Every day you get up and your mission is to serve your customer, but in this case, your customer is also the owner of the company. And that makes it pretty easy to align on strategy and the company to align on strategy, where a large Fortune 100 company typically would be a stock company that's listed on the stock exchanges, and their owners are investors all over the world that have no contact, no interaction with the company. They're just looking for a return. Not the case with the co-op. With the co-op, the owners are the people that we're working with every day, trying to make happy. So that makes the alignment pretty simple, makes the goals of the company very clear, and that you're serving a purpose, and that purpose is that customer owner, and making sure that the company's doing the right thing to make sure that they can help them grow.
And I would piggyback on both those. It's it's not working for just a company that is just after the almighty buck, to give back to people that have no connection to it. You are working with your customer, which is also the owner of the company, and you are our need for tomorrow. We need leaders. We need employees to keep this thing going. So come work for Land O'Lakes. Forget about those other two companies. You better come work for us.
Well, thank you guys again for joining us. I don't think we have any other questions. Dan, Steve, Rick, thank you for taking the time. I know you guys took time out of your own farming operations and to come with us today, and we appreciate that a lot. You're all three great member supporters of the Iowa Institute, and we appreciate you and your company. Just for everyone else on the line, we'd just like to remind you, these will be up on our YouTube channel. And also, we do have our IIC scholarship. We have 8 $2,000 scholarships. So if you're an intern on the line, or if you know any other of your intern buddies out there, make sure they apply for the scholarship. It's really easy. It won't take you guys much more than an hour. So thank you again today. Thank you for tuning in the last 4 weeks. We appreciate it. And that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.